it's Sully and Jones, and this is Kitchen Table Research, where we do the research so you don't have to. I just want to let all of our fans know that we are now on YouTube. Every episode that we did that hit Spotify and the other audio platforms, you can now find on our podcast section on YouTube. Also, we have a lot of content out on TikTok, as you guys know. Again, you can find us under Kitchen Table Research or Marcus the Bunny. And if you want to reach out to us, give us an email at kitchen.table.research@gmail.com. And if you would like, we will send you a free bumper sticker. I also want everybody to know that we've opened a TikTok shop and have some of our favorite products on there, like Liquid Death and Go Pure, which I love both of those products. And the profits we make keep this podcast going, so it's advertisement free. So go shop on Kitchen Table Research TikTok shop. But today I have a very amazing special guest who I've gotten to know over the past year or two, and it happens to be Darlie Routtier's sister, Danelle Stahl-Fugate. So welcome, Danelle.
Hey, thank you guys for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
Okay, so we were kind of just wondering, I mean, I know we've had a lot of personal discussions over this case, but I think our fans would really like to know what was it like for you before and while Darlie was being arrested, like as the victim, you know, of this crime, because you're a victim too. Can you kind of walk us through that?
Yeah, it was definitely a rude awakening, to say the very least. Growing up, I really had full confidence in the police and the justice system. I was very whitewashed. Like, I grew up in like a normal, average American home where you respect the police, you respect the justice system, and they don't arrest innocent people, and they certainly don't convict innocent people. And when all this happened with Darlie, we were just kind of, first of all, you never think that can happen. Like, it can't happen to my family. It won't happen to my family. It won't happen to my nephews. It won't happen to my sister. But it does, and it did. And now here we are. Not only did somebody break into her house, kill her children, and try to kill her, but then the justice system came in for a second attack. And now she's incarcerated for 28 years, and they essentially stole that whole branch of my family tree. Yeah. So it was really rough, especially for, you know, a 13-year-old girl who was so naive and very, I mean, I'm going to say I was probably sheltered because I really didn't know anything about crime. I didn't know anything about cops or the legal system other than they took care of the bad guys. That was definitely my mistake. And it was definitely Darlie and Darren's mistake. And I remember specifically Darren's friend saying, you know, it may be time for y'all to look at getting some representation. And the sentiment was, innocent people don't need lawyers. And that will never, ever leave my mind again, because innocent people need lawyers more than anybody else.
Yeah.
It's just too easy to paint a picture and persuade the jury, and that's exactly what they did. They tainted the jury's mind from the day Darlie was arrested. That's when they started the process, and it definitely was an image of my family that was portrayed very incorrectly. We were just normal, average people. Darlie was generous, sweet, kind, loving, affectionate. She was a wonderful mother. I still wish I could be the kind of mother that she was. She went extra in everything, you know, birthday parties, class parties. She was, you know, the PTO mom, whatever. She was going to go extra, and it didn't matter what the cost was or how much effort it required. Darlie found a way to make everything special for her children. And for me as well. I was kind of an extension of her children. So not only did I lose my sister and my nephews, I kind of lost a second mom.
You kind of lost like your little community.
Yeah, so we did get closer as a family because everybody believed in Darlie so strongly that we were not going to miss an opportunity to, come together and fight until, we had no breath left. So it has definitely kind of anchored us in that sense, but it's just hard because it would be, Darlie would be the head of the show if she was out here. And now we're left to kind of piece it together on our own. And it's just not the same, and it never will be until she's home. And then, things will be different. But we're just patiently waiting. But we do have faith, and we know that now we know that the justice system is not perfect, and it does need work, and it does need to have some internal monitoring and internal guidelines and standard practices that are, the standard, like, gold level examples for the justice system. And I really think that Dallas CIU is really putting in the work to create those best practices. And I am seeing the work that they're doing, and they are investing a lot of time and resources into Darlie's case. And we are so very grateful that they feel it's worthy of their attention. So we just patiently wait, and we're very hopeful that with the Innocence Project and the CIU involved, the Conviction Integrity Unit, that we will have resolution, and we'll have the correct resolution sooner rather than later. So those are sure encouraging words. We're trying. We try to stay positive. I've always been on the glass half full side of that debate. And I've always kept my faith as, my biggest tool. It is really my only coping skill. And so, yeah, I would say that is probably a benefit for me. Maybe the only benefit out of all of this is that it does force you to recognize that you have no control over anything in your life. You really don't. You are at the mercy of others in every situation. And I just have to remind myself that, I know who's in control, and I know who is controlling all of these decisions and who is making this possible. So thankful for that, and thankful that, we have the ability to talk to her now, because she definitely strengthens our faith a lot.
Yeah, tell us, how do you communicate, and how often, with Darlie?
So she has a tablet now. The Texas Department of Criminal Justice finally went to the tablets for communication, which means no longer do inmates get paper mail. Everything is scanned in through the Dallas location. They have like a central location where mail is sent, and all of that mail is scanned in and sent directly to that inmate's tablet. They can make phone calls on that tablet now as well, and I talk to Darlie every day.
Yeah.
Sometimes 3 or 4 times a day. She doesn't get that tablet turned on for calling capacity until 2 p.m., and it is limited as to who she can make calls to.
Right.
But it is a cost to call or to receive a call.
Yes.
So the TJ is profiting. Hopefully they're profiting from it and will use those funds to better the living conditions that they're holding prisoners in, because it's pretty deplorable.
Yeah. What is her day-to-day life like?
So they have a work program, and she is able to work in it kind of fluctuates which hours they get to work at depending on staffing. She stays on the work program, and if you have any violations, or if you're bad behavior, or if you just don't get along with others, then they don't let you on the work program. She gets visits once a week. They have rec time where they can go sit in the day room, is what they call it. There's a TV in there. They can socialize. They can even have meals together in the day room. Sometimes they'll make, different dips and snacks and things and share when they can. So she has some support inside there. All of the girls in there are very supportive of Darlie. I can't say that all of them are good people. There's a couple in there that Darlie just doesn't have any communication with, but in general, there's a core group of them that, are very strong Christians and very supportive of one another. So
they get to do like Bible study, and I write to Darlie. I'm not on her phone list because I just keep thinking it comes up like twice a year, and I just keep thinking, well, I'm gonna get on her phone list and she's gonna get out.
Yeah. That'll be how. As soon as you get on there, they'll exhaust. That would be about right?
She can write letters, and she can watch TV on her tablet as well, right? Like, they do approve certain shows, so she can get into like a series. And I know like recently she was watching Heart of Dixie, and so she does get those tablets do provide like kind of an extra support system for the individual.
Yes. For sure, it's a very welcome distraction. She does have to pay for that. And they're not cheap. Like, the shows are like $2 an episode or something, and it can add up. But
does that come out of her commissary?
It is a separate account. It's her Securus account.
Okay.
And her commissary is completely separate. So it is kind of, we kind of have to balance out, where do you need money now? Do you need it in Securus, or are you needing it for commissary?
Yeah.
So
and I always... Yeah, I was gonna say I know we kind of have a group of people that we've donated to her commissary, and I always, when I write her, provide her with tons of stamps because I know that she loves to send mail and be able to communicate with you guys as well.
Yes.
And try and send her pictures of just like the outside world, and I know she loves like nature, and gardening is a big thing, and this summer I planted sunflowers for the boys, and so I do send her stuff like that. And talking about Devin and Damon, would you mind kind of giving us like what were the boys like?
Oh, boy.
I know. I'm sorry. I don't want to make you cry, but I think it's important because I think in this story, a lot of people get lost in the Darlie drama, if that's kind of what you want to say, and they forget about what really happened to those two boys.
Yeah, we lost two very precious, pure, innocent little angels in all of this. And that definitely does get overlooked by people that cover the case, or, news media, or all the drama that goes on the social media sites. They forget that. And they really just, they bash my entire family, and that's painful. And I know that the boys would be very, very disappointed and upset with mankind for the way they have treated my family. But you can't fix crazy, and you can't tame all the jackasses. So we try very hard to not buy into that, and we don't give it fuel. But we do focus on remembering the boys, and my memories of the boys are very much childhood memories. Devin was a constant shadow. Anytime I was there, he was right beside me. We would do all kinds of fun things together. I would dress him up in different scarves, and we made like fashion shows that were funny, like costumes. And I would make him do cheerleading stunts and try to be responsible. I think there's a video out there of him doing a cartwheel, and I'm 99.9% sure that I coaxed him into doing that and learning how to do that. And, you got to trick them into thinking it's ninja moves, but really that was pure cheerleading. But and then there was Damon, who was Devin's shadow. So if Devin was following me, Damon was right behind him. And there was never a moment where they were not, hand in hand, essentially. They did everything together. And Damon was definitely the quiet one of the bunch, but not... He definitely had his own opinions and wasn't afraid to tell you that he did or didn't like something. I would say they were both pretty picky eaters, but if I asked them to eat something, they would eat it. I guess maybe that was my superpower for them. But we enjoyed everything with them. There wasn't anything that we didn't include them in, and they were game for anything. Swimming, hikes at my house. We had a bunch of land, and so we would go for nature hikes and pretend like we were going to camp out. And they were always fun to be around. We always found a way to have fun. And it's just those innocent childhood memories that I'm so thankful for.
Yeah, I actually interviewed a mom who lost her son, Yvonne, and that's on our YouTube, the Max DeVries case. And speaking to these mothers that have lost these innocent, beautiful children, I mean, it's so heartbreaking. And I think that you said it best. Like, you have to just remember and hold on to the good times that you have. Otherwise, you'll just go crazy.
For sure. I think it also helps me to know that, it's heavy, but it kind of comforts me to know that they never felt true disappointment. They never had heartbreak. They were never exposed to bad things. Their life was as good as a kid's life can be. So for their existence, their entire existence, to be so beautiful and so pure and happy, like they didn't have any bad days. Were they kids and get in trouble every once in a while? Well, sure. I mean, we spilled a whole thing of eyeshadow on Darlie's carpet and Darren had to steam clean it. But it was not bad. It was something we were able to laugh at, and we got over it, and it was fine. That was like the most they ever felt that was uncomfortable. The rest of their life was so beautiful and so wonderful. So knowing that their existence was the epitome of perfect, and they had no heartache and they had no pain and they had no burdens to carry, really kind of gives me comfort and makes me feel a little bit better about not getting to keep them.
Yeah. And now you have children of your own. And I do. Yeah, I've been so blessed to be a part of your family, and I can see the love that your family has. And to think that your sister is sitting on death row is such a juxtaposition in my mind.
It's crazy to think about, but they villainized us so well that the general public, I think, really thought that we were capable of supporting a murderer without second thought. And we very much are not like that. Like, we, as a general rule, have good moral values. We have strong commitments to being fair and being good Christian people, and we don't lie, cheat, or steal. And they just victimized us again by painting the entire family as such evil, vain, thoughtless, ugly souls. And that's definitely not what we are. If the general public had the opportunity to really get to know who Darlie was and who we are as a family, they would see how outlandish and how ridiculous these claims really were. But they didn't. We had a gag order. We couldn't talk about anything. We couldn't do anything. We couldn't say anything or show anything, share anything. So our hands were completely tied, and it was left to the media to present whatever they wanted. And it really, really left a bad taste in everybody's mouth.
Well, and Judge Toe, I'm sorry, when he decided whatever he decided, he really was not supportive of y'all at all.
No.
In my opinion. I mean, he just ixnayed everything that could have helped Darlie.
Absolutely. We filed for a new trial like a ridiculous amount of times. And every time, in my opinion, every time it was a good argument, and he poo-pooed every single one of them as if they were not legitimate claims or not legitimate.
And we studied so many cases where it is supposed to be innocent before proven guilty, and the fact, which we, had to make a correction in our episodes of like, why didn't your family post bail? Like, they didn't allow you to. They revoked her bail. And, looking at Casey Anthony, Scott Peterson, all these other people, like, had the opportunity for bail,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was definitely very one-sided. And we definitely were cursed from the very get-go. And if you think about it, in the general public, the assumption is if the police arrest somebody, they're guilty. They committed a crime. That is just the nature of what humans think. We trust in our authority figures, and in reality, it is so far from the truth. They arrest whoever, because they have, whatever they think they have on that person. And in Darlie's case, the only thing they had on her was a contaminated crime scene, and that contamination is what led to her conviction.
Yeah, there's nothing that really holds up strong. I mean, we've all talked about that, the circumstantial evidence.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that was because it was a mother killing children that everybody decided we must convict, and we don't give her the benefit of the doubt at all.
Well, I think it's like following the, was it Susan Smith, Diane Downs? It was like this culture of, oh my gosh, moms can do this. And it just got immediately applied to Darlie's case, it seems like.
Yeah. Because those two crimes were so close together.
Yep. And then you had the Yates murder.
Right.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, it definitely confirmed for the general public that, anybody is truly capable of murder.
Right.
Like, if you have arms and there's a knife nearby, you're capable of hurting somebody with that knife. But is it probable? Not in our case. It definitely was not probable that Darlie would have or did do anything to harm the boys. But it happens, and unfortunately, Darlie got lumped in with that, even though she doesn't meet any of those characteristics, none of them.
Right, she's never been diagnosed with anything, and your entire, not just your entire family, but Darren, who lost Darren lost his sons, and grandparents lost their grandchildren. I mean, even Darren's mom on her deathbed still committed to the fact that Darlie was innocent.
Absolutely. And I can't think of any cases in the history of crime cases that have been publicized that I can view. I can't find any where there's not somebody inside that family coming out saying, well, she may not have been as motherly, or she may have been this, or whatever. There literally was nobody, and there literally was no dirt. Like, Darlie came out clean as a freaking whistle. If you looked at me trial at 26, I mean, I'm sure they would have had me committed to, whatever, like any psych ward or whatever. They would have made me into a terrible person, and I'm a pretty decent human being. But when they dig, they're going to find somebody that doesn't like you. They're going to find something that you did wrong. Like, I've had traffic tickets. They would have used that against me.
Right. Or like one time you discipline your kid in the grocery store, it gets held against you forever.
Yes, exactly. It's awful to think that that is how people work. But in the justice system, the district attorney or whoever is responsible for building that case, they only look for the bad because they've already got the charges against somebody. They don't care about the good. They only look for the things that support their case. And that is really a tricky situation.
All they had was character assassination.
Absolutely. And some contamination. That fiber knife, 100% contamination from the fingerprinting process.
And just like assumptions being made too soon.
Yeah. They were very quick to release information. The police department actually sent a fax to the media, and the media somehow got it to us where they were leaking information to the press, and it had Rowlett Police Department's fax number at the top of it.
Even though there was a gag order.
Even though there was a gag order. Now, whether or not that was, somebody inside the police department that secretly was doing it, or was it Jimmy Patterson trying to build a case with the media? We don't know. We really don't know. And I mean, that's alleged. I don't have that fax anymore to show it, but that's definitely a very vivid memory for me.
Well, and speaking about things that just, again, don't happen in other cases, is you have the two main crime scene investigators and main two detectives not even being called forward by the prosecution, but rather the defense. And then Jimmy Patterson, halfway through his testimony, pleads the fifth. And then the second in command, Chris Frosch, immediately doesn't speak at all and pleads the fifth. I've never seen that in a case where it wasn't mistried.
And to point out that he basically was instructed to do that by the judge. I mean, that feels like judicial misconduct to me. I don't know the rules of judging. I'm not a judge, but I mean, I feel like that kind of steps over the boundary of legal counsel.
Well, and like the judge is supposed to be a neutral party. Yeah, Jones, did you want to say something?
Well, I was just going to remind us of that quote where, quote, quote, the West Texas judge said, if this had happened in my courtroom, I would have declared a mistrial that day. So you've got lots of people who do know the law that have certainly come forward and said that trial process and that judge were crock.
Absolutely.
I've seen them interview detectives on this case who literally say, like, why, if you're the detective and you're the one that solved this case, of course you're going to take the stand.
Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't you?
Yeah, if you did a good job, you want to boast about how well you did. And in this situation, you would think that they would be boasting from the rooftops, but they were
Exactly.
They definitely fell on the side of being concerned for their own legal stance. What they did was definitely questionable, and they definitely could have, if the judge thought so, could have been found guilty of wiretapping and, fraudulently recording things. But unfortunately, it's stacked in their favor from the very get-go. I mean, as is the legal system in general, it's stacked in the prosecution's favor from the very get-go.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to keep you for too long. I know you're a very busy woman. Do you have any other questions for Danelle Jones before we let her go?
I don't. I just pray every day that there's a resolution to this and that it's soon.
Yes, me too. I appreciate you guys so much.
Well, I really appreciate you, Danelle. I mean, when you were talking about, maybe some of the good things that have come out of this, you've affected my life in such an amazing way, and I'm so glad that I've gotten to know you. And that's one thing I can say is a positive for me. And you're just a beautiful person inside and out. You remain so positive, and I look up to that. And I look up to you as a mother and as a woman who's advocated for your sister.
I appreciate that a lot. It's good to make friends. And I think you have to go through life collecting friends everywhere you go. And you can never have too many friends. So thank you for being a friend.
Well, yeah. You've impacted both of our lives in such an amazing way. And thank you for joining us today. And is there anything else you want to say before? Well, you do have a TikTok where you do advocate for Darlie. So do you want to quickly...
Yeah, I have a TikTok. It's I think it's Fugate 1982. You can search Darlie Routier's baby sister on TikTok and find me that way. I haven't been super active on it here lately just because we have been so busy with so many different fires in my own personal world, but nothing bad, just busy stuff. But I do advocate for her when I can, and that will be where I update when I'm allowed to update. Some things are kept quiet for reasons that the team, doesn't really share with us. But we know that there's things coming and they're working on things, and we do expect resolution, whether that be a new trial or a full exoneration, that will happen. You can put money on it.
I believe that.
Well,
and
that's good to hear.
And like you said, we pray every day.
Yes, I appreciate it. And he's listening, and faith is a very powerful thing. So you just got to keep your faith.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Well, like I said, thank you so much, Danelle.
Of course. Thank you guys for having me. Sending y'all all my love. Keep up the good work.
Oh, thank you. All right. Well, you have a great day.
All right. Y'all too. Talk to me later.
Okay. Bye. Well, that was so amazing having Darlie's sister here. Again, a big thanks to Danelle. And like she said, you guys can go stay up to date on her TikTok. And the rest of this episode, we're going to give you guys a quick update about some of the other cases that we covered in season 1. Which we started like 2 years ago. But as I stated in the beginning, we've moved all of our content over to YouTube. So go check that out. Kitchen Table Research, all the audio. And then starting with season 2, which we've already kicked off, we have 2 episodes up. We have the episode of Sandy Ray and the episode of Peggy McGuire. So for season 2, we are moving into Oklahoma cases. And right now, Jones is doing research for the Oklahoma Girl Scout murders. So, we also post shorts to our TikTok, and we have a new studio that we are filming season 2 in. So like I said, if you want to jump on our YouTube, you can get ahead, but the audio for those should be out very soon. So on our TikTok, we also cover cases like the Menendez brothers, BTK, Ed Kemper, and more. So go check us out there. And the rest of this episode, we're going to get into some of the updates. So Jones, do you want to update us on the Austin Yogurt Shop murders, which was the first case that we covered here on Kitchen Table Research?
Well, it makes me sad to continue to have to do this, because I just believe in my heart of hearts that those 4 women were not murdered without some DNA evidence and without somebody knowing something. So it's been 30 plus years, and it is time for the families to have some resolution and be able to mourn their children. I don't know whether it's better to know what happened or better to know what didn't. How am I saying that? Better to know the whole story instead of part of the story, because the whole story is heinous. So, we went to trial, we convicted the wrong people. We're hinging on a sample right now that is DNA evidence that the FBI is not releasing quite yet. We don't exactly know why. The Austin community has not forgotten. When you're in Austin, if you're looking, you still see signs of the people that were deeply affected by this crime, as was really everybody in Austin. So we will stay put. I look at it on a regular basis as to whether there's any new leads. There's not. There is on People Magazine Investigates. They dive into that episode, Still Unsolved Case, and that is entitled Who Killed Our Girls? So there is a new update out on the People Magazine Investigates website.
It's an episode on Investigation Discovery, so you can find it there.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's on the platform Investigation Discovery, and it's People Magazine investigates, and it's I think it's episode 7, Who Killed Our Girls. It's very good, so you guys should go watch that. Okay, so let's get into updates on Kenneth McDuff. So obviously, we covered Kenneth McDuff, which was a very hard case to cover. He still creeps up in my nightmares from here and there. But this morning, unfortunately, I looked to see if there was any, I don't know, just anything out there in the internet. Melissa Northrup was murdered by Kenneth. Unfortunately, Melissa's son, who she left behind, and grandson were shot to death just recently.
By who?
I'm not sure, but I read just a quick article. I think it just happened. And the first thought I had is like, why do these cases, some people just seem to live tragedy after tragedy? You would think that, you know, you would have like one, like very few people have one person murdered in their family, let alone, you know, this many. You would think one murder a lifetime would be enough. So that's very sad and unfortunate to hear for the Northrup family.
And as we get more information, we will certainly update you.
Yeah, and you guys, like I said, we're not doing our daily digest as we were in the beginning. We've kind of moved things around so that you guys can interact with us more. So like I said, go to our TikTok or our YouTube and we'll keep you updated there. I do want to quickly, going back to the Darlie Routier case, Lynch, Charles Lynch, was one of the experts for the prosecution who matched Kenneth McDuff's hair, which led to Kenneth McDuff's arrest and ultimate execution. So he appears as a trace evidence expert for the prosecution, also in Darlie's trial. So Charles Lynch did the crime scene investigation when there was a crash at the DFW airport out of Dallas. I believe that was in the late 80s. It affected him psychologically to the point where he was in rehab. So he was the expert for the prosecution on Kenneth McDuff's trial while he was in rehab. And then he goes on to testify in Darlie Routier's trial. So we did talk about Lynch quite a bit when we covered the Routier trial. So I just wanted to connect those back, bless you, for our fans again. I will let you get into Juarez, and before we do that, we did kind of jump over to New Mexico and cover the Las Cruces bowling alley massacre because a lot of people see similarities between the Austin Yogurt Shop and the Las Cruces bowling alley massacre. However, when we did our episodes and we did our research, I don't believe they're connected, although, I do think that Kenneth McDuff knows what happened in Austin with the Austin Yogurt Shop murders. So I do think those are more connected than Austin Yogurt Shop and Las Cruces. Unfortunately, we have no updates in the Las Cruces bowling alley. There has been no DNA, no matches, and no updated suspects in that case. So again, there are several victims there that have no closure.
Right. And then you move right across the border into Juarez, where we talked about the cartel. And every now and then we run across a news story that says, whereas women continue to go missing, they go missing on the Texas-New Mexico side of the border, and they go missing around the Juarez. Nobody's been arrested. No fingers have been pointed. The cartel is very active in Juarez. So we don't have any specific updates, but those of us that live in Texas are hoping that we see some border security along the border so that some of this stuff doesn't continue to happen.
And we don't get political. Yeah, we don't get political on this podcast, but I do wonder if maybe some of border security should go, well, I believe it should go to finding out what is happening to these women in Juarez.
Well, and if we come across the border and try to interfere with Mexican police, I don't think that's going to go over very well.
Right. Yeah, I mean, well, their police is basically owned by the cartel, at least along the border side.
Right.
So we actually helped with an investigation this summer privately. That's why we took some time off. And we tried to help a family who had a child that was missing for 15 years, who potentially was trafficked out of Spring, which is around the Houston area of Texas. That was very hard. Both me and Jones did work as consultants on that case. And so I just hope maybe we were able to help one family. And when we can speak more openly on this case, we will do that as well. But I do have it pinned to the top of my TikTok. Moving on to Candy Montgomery and the Betty Gore case. Do you remember covering that?
Oh, yeah.
That was a while ago. So again,
That was a while ago.
yeah, I'll cover the next couple, and then I want you to do the Moscow murders because you covered that
Well,
case.
the Betty Gore case, you say, how did BG get away? BG was sentenced to death and executed.
No, here, let me give you an update. It's been a while since we've done it. So there's no updates in the Candy Montgomery. Betty Gore was murdered by Candy Montgomery with an axe. And that went to trial. And I look back at this case, which James Cron, which worked the Darlie Routier case, he matched Betty Gore's fingerprint to the crime scene as he was a fingerprint expert. How did Betty Gore get away with murdering a woman with an axe, yet we have Darlie Routier sitting on death row?
Betty Gore did not get away with murder.
I'm sorry.
Candy Montgomery got away with murder.
You're right. Yes, I'm sorry. Candy Montgomery got away. She went to trial.
Betty Gore. Do I have that right?
Yes, you have it right. You have it right. So Betty Gore was the victim of Candy Montgomery, and like I said, Cron worked this case. And my question is, like, how did Betty Gore get away with axing a woman 50 times? That, like I said, yeah, and Candy Montgomery walked out the courtroom doors as a free woman. If you want to go back and listen to that case. And there's also a great documentary done by Jessica Biel on Hulu about it. But like, my question is, how did Candy Montgomery walk through the door and Darlie sits on death row?
I can't answer that question. Who was the woman that was executed for killing 2 or 3 husbands? We covered it.
We briefly covered it. Oh man, her name, and I think that's why I'm getting it mixed up, is Betty Lou Bates. I think that's why I keep getting it mixed up because of the Bettys. Betty Lou, she was executed. Yes, she was. Yeah, she had. You're exactly right. I believe she had killed some husbands. That happened, I believe, in the 80s, and she was executed in the 90s. And that kind of rolls.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Rolls over into our next case, which we covered, was the Karla Faye Tucker case. So obviously there are no updates with Karla Faye Tucker. If you want to go back and listen to that episode, she was convicted of murder and sentenced to death row. Now, she did spend time on death row with Darlie Routier, and they did become friends. As we talked about in that episode, Karla Faye Tucker kind of turned her life around. She found God, and after detoxing off of drugs and being sober for quite a while, she did admit to her mistakes. And we know that Carla committed those crimes. But after the last few years and the cases we've been involved in, it does really make me rethink about the death penalty. And so that case has affected me kind of personally, getting to talk to some of the women that sit on death row. And it does, like I said, it makes me rethink about the death row sentencing here in Texas and how heavily we do carry out execution here. And have you heard this? So yesterday there was news that the Menendez brothers, their sentence might be commuted and they might get time served and get paroled. Now it hasn't gone through the judge or their parole board, but the district attorney did make a statement yesterday, which would have been November. I have no idea. So we're in early November. And what do you think about the Menendez brothers getting out? Like, they did this documentary on Netflix called Monsters. And I think, as you can tell by the name, the director, Ryan Murphy, who's done American Horror Story, who did the Dahmer series Monsters on Netflix, points to how brutal the Menendez case really was and how complicated the sentencing and imprisonment is for these twisted tales. And now people are having all this sympathy for the Menendez brothers because they were abused. But as we see in Karla Faye Tucker's case, as we see in a lot of the psychopathy like Kenneth McDuff, we can have sympathy for the lost child, for the child that was abused, but they turn a point to where they do become monsters. And what do you think about if the Menendez brothers gets released?
I don't think they're going to commit another murder.
But
I think there needs to be a system, and it would have to be implemented because it's not in existence right now. I think that those people that were convicted probably need to be monitored. I'm not saying with ankle monitors. I'm just saying, once a year, you go back before the court that sentenced you, and you do kind of an update. And I don't intend to break these people of any money that they have been able to accumulate, but maybe there's a check-in. But I don't think everybody deserves to be strung out by their toes for the rest of their life, particularly in the Menendez case, because I do believe Father Jose probably was abusive. And it's, the books that I've read on it, it always alludes to that. But because both he and Betty were killed.
Right. We don't have their
you don't have his voice, so you don't really know what happened.
Well, we know that Jose himself was sexually and physically abused as a child, and it seems like he did not break that cycle and did go on to abuse Lyle and Eric. But the question I posed the other day on social media is, Lyle didn't break the cycle either because he sexually and incestually raped Eric. And I'm like, so do you want Lyle out there living next door to your child?
Nope.
So that's the answer for me. I don't think they should be out. Now,
okay.
I think that they should be able to be in prison together so they can see each other because, like you said, they did commit a premeditated murder, and I don't think necessarily that they're all evil, particularly the Menendez brothers. So I do think they should be able to be housed in prison together.
Well, and the tide of American opinion has certainly changed through the years, and I think you and I have seen that when we work on a more current case versus a case that's 20 or 30 years old. The public opinion has changed. And, I always wonder whether we're a kinder, gentler nation. And I think the tide is turning that way. To me, there is a difference. But if you were sitting on death row, would you rather be killed or would you executed by that? Or would you rather spend the rest of your life in prison without the chance of parole?
I think that it's particularly an interesting question here in Texas because in Texas, death row inmates aren't allowed to touch anybody. Like, Danelle can't hug Darlie. She hasn't hugged Darlie in almost 30 years. Darlie still has another son, Drake, that survived.
Right.
And she's never been able to hug him, even when he had leukemia. And I don't think that is just, but I know in other states, death row inmates have different, they have different policies.
Parameters.
Yeah, and so I think somebody like Darlie would rather spend the rest of her life commuted, not on death row, so that she could hug and touch and feel her family, if in fact, hopefully she gets out. But I don't know. It just raises so many questions for me. And I think the tide has turned. It's turned for me. Do you think in today's age that they would allow Karla Faye Tucker to be executed?
The problem with Karla Faye is that she admits to the crime. So there's no question that she's guilty. Whereas in Darlie's case, of course, she's never admitted anything about the crime. She's maintained her story for years and years and years. And so we don't know that she was a party to any of that. And so I guess there's my difference. I don't know, Anna.
But it's like the Menendez brothers also admit that they killed their parents, and Eric went down to get more buckshot out of the car because Kitty wasn't dead. So he goes down to the car and reloads his gun to finish the job. I mean, that is pretty heinous.
Well, and I didn't know that part of the story because the last time I read the Menendez story was when they were found guilty, and I read that book years and years and years ago. So I'm not up to date with the most current, information.
Yeah, go watch that Netflix series. It's really good.
We will.
Okay.
We will. We've been intending to do some Netflix watching in the next couple of days.
Yeah, weather's getting cooler. I'm excited for the holidays. Well,
are you?
I am. Why don't you give us an update then about the Moscow murders?
The what?
Moscow.
So let's update on the Moscow murders. Several updates have emerged recently. The trial, which was originally scheduled for 2023, has been postponed to June of 2025 because there's extensive pretrial procedures that everybody's trying to get in before the judge. His defense team wants a venue change, and I can't. I think anybody that we're going to convict, or we think we're going to convict, probably deserves a venue away from the crime scene. So I get that. We'd like to see an impartial jury, and they want to move it to Boise, Idaho, where there's a bigger pool to pick from for jurors, and that maybe they can seat a non-reactive.
Yeah, I don't think I think it's like we know everybody in the media nowadays is going to know about these cases, but I think in certain situations where it's small town, where like somebody would have known the victim, they're not going to be impartial. You know what I mean? Or if they knew Brian even like just had a class with him, a professor or a friend of a professor, like in these small towns, it's just like 1 degrees of separation. And so I do think in cases like that a venue change is good. So, why don't you pick up on additionally the defense?
The defense has cast some doubt on some of the evidence, and so I think we need to make absolutely sure as to what we have in the evidence file before we take this case to trial. It is going to be very convoluted. It is going to be, I don't know how you're going to get those 4 families up to testify and not have some crying in the courtroom. I mean,
yeah, it's it's like the Austin yogurt shop murders. Like 4 young adolescents were brutally murdered in one night.
Yeah, I think it's going to be another courtroom of the century.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. I'm like, it's just another like trial of the century.
Yeah, it is.
Well, speaking,
and we've got all this stuff about incels and. Most American people don't even know what that means.
I was going to say, I'm surprised you know what that means.
I'm surprised I know what that means too, but I had to look it up right after he got arrested, and they were carrying around the incel banner. I had to do research on it because I'd never heard that word before.
Right. Well, and I think that's a response to social media being interjected into not just crime, but into our lives as a whole,
Right.
Well, speaking of trials of the century, there are a couple that are ongoing, and I'll cover the next few. So Delphi. The trial just began last month, October 18th. New and sometimes controversial details have emerged. Testimonies have provided emotional accounts from those involved in the investigation, including search parties who initially discovered clothing and eventually the victims' bodies near the Monon High Bridge. The prosecution relies on circumstantial evidence, such as Allen's alleged confession and his admission to being near the bridge on the day of the murders. However, there's no direct DNA evidence linking Allen to the crime scene, which is complicating this case for the prosecution. In a significant defense strategy, Allen's attorneys have argued that evidence may have been mishandled and suggest alternative theories, including a possible ritualistic element. The defense theory points to a potential link to Odinism, a controversial suggestion that the court limited by ruling that it cannot be argued directly to the jury. So that would be some kind of like cult-like ritualistic thing. Testimonies have also raised concerns about investigation errors and loss of audio recordings. I don't understand when police do their job, how they don't bag everything, keep everything. Like in this day with technology, how do you lose audio recordings? Don't you have that saved to backup hard drives? Jesus. The trial.
Really, we need to get this better. I mean, I know that there are evidence rooms. We see them all the time on the TV. But maybe we need to, put evidence in a safety deposit box, so that nobody messes with it.
Yeah.
Nobody has access to it. Nobody can go in and change it or hide it.
And again, this is concerning 2 little girls. I mean, they were like 14 years old, Abigail Williams and Liberty German. So again, we have parents that have lost children that have no closure. So the
Right.
trial, which is expected to continue into mid-November, is closely watched by the Delphi community and beyond, like people like us. And many people still, like I said, seek resolution in this case after nearly 7 years. So that's very, still, again, a very sad story.
Yes.
So let's get into the fall of the Murdaugh dynasty. We covered the Murdaugh trial or case last year. In the Alex Murdaugh case, recent updates center around a controversial appeal that could lead to a new trial. Murdaugh's defense team has argued that Rebecca Hill, the former Colton County Clerk of Court, improperly influenced jurors during his initial murder trial. Specifically,
Why did they do that?
I know, I'm like, what is so hard about this? Specifically, they allege that Hill, so the former county clerk, pressured jurors to ensure a guilty verdict, aiming to gain publicity for a book she planned to write. You know, because that's more important than getting justice for victims. It's just gross. This claim of jury tampering was initially dismissed by a judge for lack of evidence, but the South Carolina Supreme Court has now agreed to hear the appeal directly, bypassing lower appellate courts. This decision opens the possibility of a retrial for Murdaugh, who is currently serving 2 life sentences for the murders of his wife Maggie and his son Paul. But again, I feel like we know that Alex did it, so why are you going to go messing around with a trial? And
You know, I'll probably get in trouble for saying this, but don't we ever consider taxpayer money? I mean, he's been found guilty twice.
We know he did this. Like, we have the cop's body cam. We have his phone that pings to the location. I mean, we know. You know what I mean. And we know that Paul, Alex Murdaugh's son, was, killed a young woman in a boating accident. So if you don't know the full story on that, again, go back and listen to that episode. So listen to this. In a separate but related matter, a dismissed juror, Myra Crosby, recently petitioned for the release of records explaining her removal from the jury. She claims her ex-husband's alleged comment, which were used as a reason for her dismissal, were falsely attributed to her by Hill. South Carolina's Attorney General has opposed Crosby's request, but Murdaugh's attorneys support her call for transparency as part of their broader claims of trial misconduct. These developments are part of Murdaugh's ongoing legal battles, which also include federal and state convictions for extensive financial crimes as well, that were uncovered amid his murder investigation. Further hearings are expected, and a ruling on the jury tampering appeal could potentially overturn his conviction. So, and just like I stated, Paul, who was in charge of the boating accident within the Murdaugh dynasty, Alex Murdaugh also has another son who was suspected of killing a young gay man on the side of the road. Now, his case has been reopened.
They're in a world of hurt.
Yeah. And so we do hope that... I'm trying to look at his name really fast. I apologize. So not only was the boat crash in 2019, but their housekeeper who raised Paul also had an incident where she fell and hit her head and died on the Murdaugh property. And then as I was stating,
I don't think that's true.
Yes, they had a nanny, a housekeeper that raised Paul that slipped and fell, and Maggie, Alex's wife, claimed that she had fallen due to tripping over one of the dogs. And
I thought, well, I didn't think she died until 2 or 3 weeks later in the hospital.
well, at any rate, it's suspected that there was maybe foul play, and her children have, I think, are doing a civil court trial because the Murdaugh family claimed her life insurance policy because she died on their property, and that should have been owed to her sons.
Well,
There's a lot. There is a lot of crime under this entire Murdaugh situation. And so, like I said, there's tons of people that need resolution in this case as well. And there is a new series, I believe it's out on Prime, that's named The Fall of the Murdaugh House. Hey, did I lose you?
yep.
Okay.
So my last comment was nothing about crime is ever easy, is it?
No, and I think when I lost you, I was stating there are still plenty of people that fall under the Murdaugh dynasty, victims of the Murdaugh family that still need answers. Cases have been reopened, civil cases are going to trial, and there is a new documentary. I believe it's out on Prime, possibly Paramount, Peacock, I don't know, one of them, but it's called The Fall of the Murdaugh Dynasty, I believe. So that has the newest updates there as well. But that, again, is going to be such a, oh man, it's going to be another huge trial. And again, like you said, taxpayer money over jury tampering, like what?
Yeah, I don't get that.
Why does he get a new trial? And then we just talked to Danelle about the way Darlie's trial went, and why did Darlie not get a new trial? It's so frustrating.
It is very frustrating, and I assume it's all about the money.
Oh, yeah, of course. Well, and look how much money, we just talked about the rise of social media and how it's impacted this, but how much money is being made off of these victims? You know what I mean? Like, their stories are put out there. It's great. I know we all love true crime. I obviously watch them as well, but this woman who was jury tampering wanted a book written. So, at what point is it for social media or documentaries, like you said, does it really just, is it up to what's going to make the most money and what's going to hit the news and media?
Sure looks that way.
It does appear that way. Well, we don't have any updates on Michael Morton. We did reach out to him to see if he would want to do an interview since we've worked with so many wrongfully convicted victims here at Kitchen Table Research. He politely declined. He said that this had been such a huge part of his life that he just wants to move forward. We all obviously respect that and wish him and his family all of the best. But you covered the Michael Morton case and you actually brought it up with Danelle. Do you have anything to state on Michael Morton?
No, I don't. I wish him the best. I wish he and his new wife the best. I wish he and his son the best and those grandkids of his.
Yeah.
A life without strife.
I agree. We wish them all the best. So we did again, we've kind of woven this last season together. So I have sent a few of the women on death row that Darlie knows a few letters just to get the insight into the daily life of somebody on death row, especially a woman. Melissa Lucio, just like Darlie Routier, her case has been picked up by the Innocence Project, the same district attorney out of New York, Vanessa Potkins. So we hope we can update you on Melissa Lucio's case soon. However, weeks ago on our TikTok, we covered Robert Robertson, who was due to be executed. He had to stay for 30 days in a bold new move by the defense, as shaken baby syndrome is a complicated to diagnose and he was convicted on behavior. However, we now know that he has a diagnosis of autism. So just like in Michael Morton's case, Darlie Routier's case, Robert Robertson's case, it's like the behavior is the driving, motivating factor, when this is so much more complicated and there's so much more of a gray area than I think the general public realizes. And honestly, it's not something I realized until we really started digging into this. So I don't know what's going to happen. These 30 days are running out quickly. That happened a couple of weeks ago. So again,
I have not heard an update.
I know, I haven't either. I'm at the edge of my seat waiting to see what happens, because I truly do think if he gets executed, we're going to execute a wrongfully convicted person. And I hope that the tides are starting to change for the death penalty here, especially in Texas, where me and Jones both live. So that kind of covers season 1. I just kind of want to ask you, how do you feel about season 1 and all the things that, we put out our first episodes on Halloween of 2022. That's been 2 years ago. What's happened in these last 2 years, and how do you feel our 30 plus episodes have gone? We do the research, and you can see how well researched we did these cases and how long it's taken us to get a season out. We're streamlining and hoping to get more content out, but we here believe in, I think, quality, well-researched content over putting out quantity like other podcasts do. So what's happened to you in these last 2 years, Jones? How do you feel everything's gone? Has your mind changed? Like, how do you feel about the justice system and everything we've done as of yet?
Wow. I haven't completely changed my mind on the death penalty, but I'm willing to entertain that there are some people that are not guilty.
Or don't deserve that type of sentencing.
Right, so I've shifted my position on that.
I agree. I still believe in the death penalty, like for BTK, Dahmer, like these people, Kenneth McDuff, like those people should be executed, in my opinion.
Right. Well, and I don't think they're particularly worried about being executed because, they
don't really have feelings.
Right, they know they're guilty, that kind of stuff.
I mean, they're psychopaths. They don't really have emotion, so.
So I think there's a plus and a minus to the death penalty. But I think if there's any doubt at all, a life conviction without parole is certainly possible.
Yeah, but maybe a better solution at this time.
Yeah, maybe a better solution, because we are trying to be kinder and gentler to each other in this country. Maybe not everybody's got the message yet, but a lot of us are really trying our best to mimic what good stewardship looks like, what good parenting looks like, because it is time to break the cycle on some of this.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that in the history of humans, we've been in this survival mode, and people might disagree, but if you go back and look at the plague and finding food and just surviving day to day, that's not what our life looks like now. Now we're surviving in a total anxiety-driven, fast-paced. There may be downsides to the society that we live in, but I don't think that killing one another is the evolution that we should be moving towards. I think becoming more evolved, becoming more intelligent, more sympathetic, like you said, breaking these generational abuses, addiction obviously plays into a lot of these stories, not just drugs, but alcohol fueled as well. it's definitely an interesting question. I mean, I can say in the last few years since we've started Kitchen Table Research, and we don't just run a podcast, but we've actually been interacting with families, advocating, helping where we can, consulting on cases, which we will produce once we can. I just had no idea this was the direction we were going to take, and honestly, I couldn't be prouder of us.
I couldn't be either, because I feel like we're affecting, maybe not solving, but we are definitely raising the awareness of what's going on socially in the United States. And do we really want to be that nation that kills people at the drop of a hat?
Correct. Yeah, I agree. The people I've been able to meet, like, you know, the Routier family, the Max DeVries episode should be out on YouTube when this comes out. The mother of the girls case that we consulted on, listening and hearing their stories and be able to advocate for them makes me feel really good, and that maybe we are enacting some change and raising some questions. And every day I wake up and look at my social media, especially TikTok and YouTube, and people are really seeing that and hearing people tell us that we're doing such an amazing job, and it feels really good. And I do appreciate all of our fans everywhere. Those messages bring me hope. They keep me inspired, and they keep me wanting to do Kitchen Table Research. So here we go, season 2.
Yeah, and I was just going to mention that in the spring semester at a college on the East Coast, we will be kind of leading a class about a case that's near and dear to our hearts, and seeing what the young people say, and we're supposed to be consultants on that. So that's pretty exciting.
We've done a lot. Like, I just never thought that this would be the direction that we're headed in. And going to CrimeCon and people kind of knowing who we are is a bit wild. I mean, one of the people in the class that we're consulting on had already listened to our podcast. That was just an amazing feeling. So all I can say is that I'm really proud of us. I'm proud of how far we've come. I love you, and I want to keep doing Kitchen Table Research.
Well, I won't give up on you then.
You haven't yet.
I haven't yet. This is quite the team we've got going on here.
Well, and we've just met so many amazing people, and we really have built a little community, not just on social media, but like personally, on a personal level. And that feels really good to be a part of that community and to be able to give them a platform so we can hear their voices.
Absolutely. And, you know, those moms that have got missing kids for years and years and years, how cool is it that we can reintroduce their story? And maybe this time we'll get some resolution. Well,
it's definitely taught me to be maybe a paranoid mom with my kid. It really does seem like it can happen to anyone, and that it happens way more frequently than the general population thinks.
Right. Agreed.
So, well, that's all I have to say. I think this has been a fantastic season. We did do another episode we did for the holidays was the maple syrup pie, so I will find another fun, not to say that was fun, but it definitely wasn't our usual. It was more of a con job.
It was.
A heist. It was a heist. So I'll find another more entertaining, less depressing story for us to do around the holidays. And as I stated, you can already go watch Peggy McGuire and Sandy Ray on YouTube. And so when you hear the the audio of this, you can jump over and listen, and then we'll have the audio up for those on Spotify and those platforms soon. So stay up to date on our YouTube and our TikTok, and I think that's all I have to say, Jones.
I think that's all I have to say, too. I'm excited about what we've got planned for our next season.
So we're kind of going into Oklahoma, and we're going to continue to provide you guys with interesting, twisted, turns, unsolved cases. The Oklahoma Girl Scouts is one. Both Peggy McGuire and Sandy Ray remain open, unsolved cases to this day. So you guys go check that out. And God, thank you to all of our fans. I mean, wow, you guys have been amazing. Give us an email. We'll send you a bumper sticker. Thank you guys. We've said it before, but we don't have a voice until you guys listen. And so thank you guys so much for hanging in there with us throughout our long and continuous seasons. And we will continue into Oklahoma for season 2.
Sounds great.
All right.
Have a good day.
All right. You have a great day too. Much love. Bye.
Much love. Bye-bye.